Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Aliens and UFOs video. Alright, one last entry here, this one based on one of your newer suggestions. This one having to do with a UFO sighting, a crash no less, that was way back in 1897 to be exact. So thank you so much for that suggestion. I was asking for maybe some of the earliest ones possible, and quite luckily it has to do with an incident here in Texas. In fact, it's known as Texas's own Roswell incident. And also there's, even if you believe this, there's a chance that not only are there still fragments of this UFO crash somewhere around there in Aurora, Texas, but the alien itself, whoever was piloting that craft, is buried in a cemetery. So how rich is that information? It definitely makes me want to go visit that cemetery sometime soon. And it has to do with this. It's known as the Aurora crash, or the Aurora Texas crash in 1897. So let's go ahead, let's talk about all the information associated with this very, very unique encounter. Now, unfortunately, there's not much info in terms of the UFO itself or of the crash itself, only because A, this is so far backdated, and then B, whatever was actually printed is just pretty much one article, and ever since then it's just hearsay, word being passed down from ear to ear, that kind of stuff that little by little just picks away at the evidence that was cited back then. But I'll try to present as much information as I can. So this happened again back in 1897 to be specific. It occurred on April 17th, so a long time ago. I very much doubt there's going to be anybody alive from that time period. But on that fateful day, the way the witnesses described it, there was a cigar-shaped UFO, something that was trailing the lights over, or I'm sorry, trailing the skies over there in Aurora, Texas. Aurora is a very small town. Back then it was 3,000 people. Who knows what the population is now, but I don't think it's anywhere, let's say, like a large city or even a small city of that kind. So back then, imagine something like this passing over the skies. You better believe that people would pay attention to it. And the way it was described, it was moving at a very slow speed. It was estimated at about 10 to 12 miles per hour, slowly but surely settling towards the earth, as the article cited. By the way, that article I was mentioning, there's only one article related to it. It was in the Dallas Morning News. It was written by one of the residents there named S.E. Hayden. More on him in a little bit, because there may be some controversy associated with this article. But he wrote this article after he, I guess, saw this, and also in talking with others with regards to that crash. But yes, the article itself mentions the bulk of this information. So this thing basically soared over slowly that area, and then it crashed first through a windmill owned by a guy by the name of Judge Proctor. And apparently this was a windmill, or it wasn't a windmill, because I was looking at two different places of information, and one of them stated that it wasn't really a windmill, it was more along the lines of some kind of water source, but it looked like a windmill. And then others are stating that yes, indeed, it was a windmill itself. Either way, though, it crashed into it before actually going into the ground. And then the way that things happened afterward, residences went up to this craft to try to see what was happening. Remember, this was the time, I believe it was 7 years before the famous Wright brothers' first flight. So in this time period, everybody would be seeing something completely shocking in terms of something up in the air like this. Also, by pure coincidence, it seems like within the past, I think it was 2 months or 2 weeks before this event, there was other people that were stating what they called aircrafts. They didn't call them UFOs back then, but they were known as aircrafts. Something that was up there, I'm sorry, airships to be more specific. That's what it was called, airships. That they were seeing these strange airships in and around the area. This was the one, though, that ended up crashing within that site. So the residences went to inspect it, and lo and behold, they saw something there, a pilot from the ship the way he was described was not of this world, and then specifically another term was Martian. So the way that the pilot was found, it was dead. This thing, whatever it was, this quote unquote Martian, was just there thrown about along with some of the scattered debris. The people there thought they would do something honorable for whatever this thing was. So first they decided to take all those pieces that were scattered from the UFO crash, and they buried it somewhere. Like they buried it somewhere within a nearby, I guess, a well of some kind. And whenever that happened, that's some more on that a little bit later. Whenever that happened, that also became another source of controversy afterward. But as far as this pilot, whatever this thing was, this Martian within the UFO craft, they decided that they wanted to give it a burial with Christian rites. It was dead. It was on their land. It was within their city. They thought that this was the right thing to do. So they took it to a nearby Aurora cemetery, and then that's where they actually buried it. You're looking at the cemetery right now, in fact. There's a Texas historical marker tied there too. Not only does it talk about the Aurora Cemetery just in general, but it also even highlights a tiny portion of it with regards to this incident. That's how much of a legend this incident has become. As far as I can tell, I think this is the only time that anyone has acknowledged, in this case, a UFO crash on a historical marker. If someone can point me out to another incident, that'd be really good to see. But otherwise, I think this is the only one I recall seeing anywhere. But yes, if you go to this cemetery to this very day, somewhere in that area, specifically in an unmarked marker, you're supposed to come across then the actual burial site of this quote-unquote Martian. There was an investigation done by several people. One was a party or a group from UFO Files, and I think another one was UFO Hunters. They went to those areas to try to see if they could find where this thing was. Because imagine that if they found the actual, let's pretend that this is 100% true, and then they found the actual burial site and they were able to uncover it, who knows what could be inside. This could be like the most landmark discovery in pretty much all of history, because then you would have 100% proof in terms of outer space life, something that's from another world. And so the way that these the things happen, I remember seeing that very interesting UFO Hunter special, I think it was, that I saw a couple of years back. They went to it and they were able to try to do some kind of radar, some kind of ground penetrating radar, but lo and behold, they couldn't do anything towards it, because unfortunately that area, whoever owns that cemetery, no doubt it's either some city division or somewhere else, they have a very strict policy about anybody going there just for that purpose. Like, they do not allow anybody to go there and try to dig up places, maybe trying to find this landmark site, because no doubt it would just interfere with everyone else's burials, because it's considered, again, unmarked, and if you do find it, then it'll just cause more publicity. So if you wanted to go see that cemetery, I do recommend going. Maybe you might even be able to find something that you would think is the unmarked area, but you can't do anything towards it. You can't start digging out, you can't do other stuff unless you have extreme permission from that location, and they're not having anything as far as permission given anytime soon. So at least that's with regards to that part. And now cut to a little bit later, the way that the story goes, some residences, those that saw the crash, those that more particular saw the UFO, they just let it be as is. Things grew over the time, over this next couple of decades. This became more of a legend to this very day. In fact, there's a bit of controversy tied to it, because as time passed by, there's the notion that some of this may have been made up. Remember that name I was mentioning earlier in the article, the S.E. Hayden, the guy that wrote pretty much the only thing citing in the Dallas Morning News of this crash. There's a theory that yes, all of this is a hoax, because apparently at that time Aurora was suffering a lot of tragedies, lots of stuff happening to it that involved like fires, some kind of spotted fever epidemics, and then they had some kind of infestation from insects, just basically a trifecta of things that was hitting their economy pretty hard. And so as a way to try to drum up business or try to bring tourism in there, this guy S.E. Hayden, who was apparently known as a jokester, decided that he wanted to do something. So he created, if you go with this theory, this notion, this crash of this UFO, and then he was able to have the Dallas Morning News print it, and then that was able to bring some new business. In fact, to this very day, again, Darren Ward says it is again known as the UFO incident of Texas. And so if that truly was a hoax, then job well done, because he absolutely was able to put Aurora, Texas on the map. But the reason why so many people do not agree with this hoax is because there are lots of witnesses that up to a certain point when they were alive, they were able to state that they saw this thing, or that knew people that saw it. For example, the people that were interviewed later on, like in the 70s and the 80s, they were but children, like at that time. And they were stating that whenever this thing happened, this crash occurred, that their parents went to investigate. They were instead held back as kids, like they were not allowed to go see it. But they absolutely knew witnesses, their own parents or other neighbors, whatever is the case, that went to go see this thing. So could all of them be lying at the same time? I don't quite think so in that regard. So that's very hard to rule out when you have multiple people stating the same thing, and each of them seemingly not having anything to like gain, like money wise, like making something up so that way they could sell a book or anything along those lines. So I think that that falls more onto the truer side, that this thing, whatever this incident was, did occur. And then that's why there's still so many witnesses. None that I think are actually living anymore, but at least back then, up to a certain point, you did have a good number. And then one last thing, remember I was mentioning earlier about the citizens taking that wreckage, putting it into some kind of well. I wanted to cover one last thing on that part. So everything that was taken with regards to the UFO crash, all that debris, all that stuff that was scattered about, well, it was placed into some area, like it was buried somewhere inside some well. And I remember in that same footage, the same UFO hunters, they were able to get permission from the owner of that property to try to bring it back up, because essentially what happened was all that stuff was buried in some kind of well, and then it was found out that there was some contamination going on related to it. So whether this was from the UFO exhibiting some kind of weird radiation, something like that, who knows. But it was thought that at that time the stuff was sealed to prevent other things or bad things from happening to people nearby. Well, this UFO hunters show was able to get permission. They removed the debris from, like they removed the well to try to find the debris listed underneath it. They removed the seal, opened everything up, went inside. Unfortunately, they were not able to find anything that stood out, like nothing in terms of like what you would expect as a big, let's say, surprise, like let's say traditional UFO parts, stuff that you and I would imagine. No, they did find water within the well, nothing in terms of any radioactivity or anything else that stood out, nothing within the well that was considered just significant. And I remember watching it too and getting excited, thinking the possibility that there was going to be something in there that would be amazing to behold. But no, it was just pretty much empty. So whatever happened to the contents within that, well, who knows? Whatever happened before, leading up to it, who knows at that point? Could stuff have been removed beforehand? That's another good question. All that stuff just got lost over time, and with the other contents of the UFO crash being buried somewhere else, they probably could be. They could be out there somewhere still. I was mentioning that one time in another video, where you imagine after all these years, someone could come across a piece of that metal. It was just there, standing outright, just nonchalantly looking like any other piece of just trash, and then not realizing that this is a piece of this famous Aurora, Texas crash. So who knows? That stuff could be out there. That little Martian could be out there too, buried somewhere. That's going to be a lot tougher though, to find. But otherwise, that's also a very, very exciting notion. I do want to visit that Aurora Cemetery sometime in the future, so that way I could try to just see it in person and then try to find if I could find, you know, that unmarked grave. One last thing on that unmarked grave too, there was a hunt that was done there where some weird metal was detected in what was presumed to be like a UFO shaped burial, but whenever the permission was asked from whoever owns that cemetery to try to exhume it, they were denied, of course, like I was mentioning earlier. These ownerships, they have a very, very strict policy there. And then when they went back to try to find that metal again, they found that it was gone. Like there was something there that was removed. Like it looks like the contents were disturbed. So interesting plot twist with regards to that. But what do you guys think? This Aurora, Texas crash, this 1897 UFO crash, again considered the Texas Roswell version. So if anyone has any more information, anybody been there before, anybody visited that area, that'd be great info to hear. So alright everybody, thanks again as always, take care.